All right. Uh, just a couple caveats before I begin. Um, excuse me. I think I'm coming down with something that I need to knock out before it goes full blast. I was at the fight live, but I didn't score it. Why? I was in what is called the auxiliary media area, meaning you aren't on press row. Like I believe press row for this fight was like 7 rows back with maybe like uh I don't know how many people in each row, but for some reason I was in the auxiliary section. And in this case, I was on the 200 level, and it's not easy to see with my eyes, at least, what I want to see when I'm up there. So I decided not to pull my score sheet out. Now, what they do in that section is give you a seat with a flat screen TV to watch. I didn't do that either. I don't do it during basketball games, and it's kind of like being in a like the skybox at an arena, which is nice with your food and all that other stuff. But um, I don't do it during basketball games, and I definitely won't do it for boxing for two reasons, and that's watching the television, the little flat screen TV. First reason, the round always ends, and when you're looking at the TV, it shows like 1 to 2 seconds left in the round because it's a bit of a delay. So I don't like that. But more importantly, secondly, when somebody lands a knockout shot or a big blow and the crowd goes, ooh, by nature, you take your eye off the TV to look down at the ring to see what's up. So you miss the knockdown, of course, because it's already happened in the ring. And then when you're watching live, and then when you focus back on the TV, well, you missed the knockdown because you took your eyes off the TV. So shout out to my man Paul Gant from Go For It Gant, who he watched most of the fight on the television set. So he's a better man than me. I didn't do it. So what did I see? Um, there was a first round knockdown, of course. Um, I'm not sure if it was behind the head or what, but um, Dechenko. We're gonna call him Dechenko, right? That's kind of like his other nickname. He's the technician, but then he's D apostrophe CHENKO, Dechenko. I like that. Tough to pronounce name. So, um, I thought the first round was the first round knockdown. So, and you don't always have to score. See, one day I might get Larry Hazard Senior, not Junior, on to just ask him about scoring, because he knows all the basics, all the fundamentals. He's been in the business for a year, and if there's a round where one guy wins, no knockdowns, those rounds are actually supposed to be scored 10-8. And then when I did score a fight one time, I gotta find the card on my website, but I'm sorry, it was it Joshua and well, anyway, you if if there's a few knockdowns but both guys get knocked down, it's a 10-point must system. So everybody scored who they thought should have won the round, but you're supposed to subtract. So if one fighter knocks a guy down, okay, and it's 10-8, and then he knocks the guy down again, it's 10-7. But then if he gets knocked down, it's like 9-7. You understand? And we're not scoring like that. But anyway, has nothing to do with anything. The cut. So eventually, CHENKO got cut, and that was a pretty bad cut. But boxing has allowed better names to continue, like Tyson Fury, for example. But then they ripped that prospect, that kid off, was it last week or a couple of weeks ago, when he got his cut. And he was an undefeated prospect. That's just not a good way to be handed your first loss. So in this fight, CHENKO had the jab working, and he outworked G in general. I've never seen Golovkin lose the jab battle, and when you look at the punch stats, which I'll see if I can slide them in. Let's say I'm talking before I'm doing it, but let's just say they're on the board now. You'll see the punch stats, and that's the CompuBox. That stuff is subjective, so I'm not going to criticize it for one fight and use it for the next. So, but Gennadiy got outworked in general. Now, what I mean by in general is I'll tell you that in a minute. In order to continue his career, Gennadiy Golovkin needs the Alvarez fight more than Saul Alvarez needs the Golovkin fight. I mean, that if it wasn't clear before, now at this point, it's about all he has left. If it's the gigantic payday, I mean, he's still going to get paid. But when you for that one though, man. And you have to wonder about, he signed a 3-year, 6-fight, $100 million deal. So if one of those fights is Alvarez, Saul Alvarez, do they pay him more out of that $100 million, or does he get something else on top of that? I think if it's a 6-year, I mean, if it's a 3-year, 6-fight deal, and he fights, I would say that it would be in that contract. It would seem. Anyway. Okay, it's the old iPhone going off. A buddy of mine is texting me. He's a Ravens fan who got to overtime and beat the Steelers on one of the worst roughing the passer calls I have ever seen. Even Gene Steratore, who's like the longtime NFL referee who they call in during replays, he said, I don't know what they were watching. And that's something that should be reviewable. You hate to see a team lose on a play like that. Anyway, body shot in the 5th round. Body shot in the 5th round. Harvey, premature stoppage. Doc says low blow. The Fight Journal Boxing says no, no. There was a low blow after that. And so that's one thing, but that was a good body shot. So Harvey missed that call. Harvey Doc, who went from my #1 referee 2 years ago, has just dropped and continues to drop. That's my man, but I got to call it straight. Harvey Doc, he missed the cut too. He said it was caused by an accidental, but no. CHENKO's cut was caused by a punch. Now when you have doctors, well, I'll more on that in a second. So G did this little roll thing with his gloves, and he kind of moved his head in the bank style in the 7th. Hard to score. But Golovkin did the opposite of what I thought he would do. And I don't know if Banks gave him a different game plan, or if Golovkin, who did it to Abel Sanchez one time, kind of did his own thing, and Abel called him out on it, but Abel is no longer his trainer, partially for doing that. So my buddy has Sammy Watkins and on his he's 13 points down. He's got Sammy Watkins on his fantasy team. And he just was like, man, I just need 11 points from Sammy, because he's got some guys playing Monday night. And what does Sammy Watkins do? First play of the game, he runs and then tweaks the old hammy, and he's off to the locker room. Anyway, my buddy, he's got a cursed team. Shout out Dr. Stokes. So the doctors checked on CHENKO's eye, Sergiy, and they kind of took a long time. One of the times, I can't remember if it was the first or second. Don't even know if there was a third, but one of those 2 times, they took a while, and what wound up happening is, by doing so, it gave a false sense of urgency to CHENKO. Advantage CHENKO, because he started coming out firing, thinking, okay, they're going to try to rip me off, or what have you, and stop the fight. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a rip off, but it gave him an advantage, because he said, all right, let me put something on this old man. And the 10th round was a great round. Great. Golovkin was head hunting throughout the fight, landing some, missing some. He definitely was doing it in the 10th. And Sergiy, he went for that shit. he was letting them know, tonight I'm the boss. And every time G started landing something, CHENKO made sure he finished it. He got off last. And the judges like stuff like that. Golovkin at times became sloppy. He was head hunting most of the fight. He just didn't. Something was off, and I'm not saying. Well, I know one thing that was off, and I'll tell you a few things in a minute. But he got hurt to the body a few times in this fight. And he was out of gas a couple of times, which we don't usually see. And that second, well, here's the thing. Saul Alvarez has always been a guy who just had stamina problems, except after failing a drug test and then fighting Golovkin. It's like, well, where's the stamina thing problem anymore? And you can have your opinion on if the guy's juicing or not, Alvarez. I don't believe in the WBC boxing program. I mean, I like Olympic style VADA testing with certain start dates, cutoff dates, what have you. So anyway, it's just odd that a guy who, like, if you have stamina problems your entire career, it's not something that other coaches can bring in and fix. It's just what it is. Oscar De La Hoya used to have that problem, and he would, everybody he switched to and everybody that came with new stuff, it was in him, and there wasn't anything that anyone could do. So he got hurt to the body a few times. He was out of gas a couple of times. And the only excuses I have for Golovkin for that are, one, his age. Two, the fact the body shots took a little bit out of him. And three, something nobody's talked about, I think Golovkin has been putting his body through something to make 160 pounds. If you look at the fight with Steve Rolls. Well, I'll get to that. Well, let me get to that in a second. So, but also, listen, he got beat up. But look at Derevyanchenko's right and left eye after the fight. The right eye was cut. It had the bad cut above it. But at the end of the fight, the left eye was almost shut. All right? And I don't mean he was blinking or winking at somebody. His eye was almost completely shut. So don't tell me Golovkin did nothing in this fight. What he didn't do, and to an extent what Derevyanchenko didn't do, is they didn't make adjustments. I thought they would make some adjustments, and neither did. The only adjustment I would say Derevyanchenko made is when those doctors looked at his eye, he said, "I'm coming with it." But neither guy made enough adjustments, in my opinion. And even though G was getting out-hustled and beaten up, you have to score the rounds, okay? This is one of those fights where people would say, Sergiy got robbed. But here's the key point of my video. This is how you score fights. You score it one round at a time. Most people that watch fights just watch the fights and they forget what happens early, remember what happens late, and may or may not remember the middle rounds. That's how you watch fights, but that's not how you score fights. Most people who watch a fight, they're, in other words, they're not sitting with an application on their app on their phone or a piece of paper and scoring round by round. No, they're at a fight party or they're just at home or what have you, watching. Okay, I'm looking at this Will Smith movie that I won't go see, but Gennadiy, man, he slapped dude with the back wheel of a motorcycle. He's on a motorcycle and then swings the back wheel around and smacks dude in the face. Okay, that's crazy. Anyway, so you have to score the rounds one by one. So what am I saying? But each round is just that. One round. What am I saying? Golovkin got outworked and he got beat up. And guess what? A drug-free 37-year-old man should get beat up a bit, okay? I don't care how good he is. But grab a piece of paper and score the fight. Score it. I'm surprised because a lot of people scored it 14-13 for G. And a lot of boxing people said they didn't have a problem with 115, 112. I didn't score it, but I think Doug Fisher said he didn't have a problem with 15-12 for Golovkin. A couple of other guys. Fisher is with Ring Magazine. He's a well-respected guy. He represents the hip-hop generation of writers. That's kind of like when he's close to 50, but he's one of those guys that came onto the scene and kind of what am I trying to say? He kind of vibed with the younger boxing fans. It's like Zab Judah and Roy, like Zab come out with the gold teeth and whatever else, and he's Zab he represented that hip hop, and then Mayweather came later and Roy Jones Jr. But so anyway, although he still has heavy hands and can hit hard, he looked a little arm weary, and of course his reflexes just, they're not what they were, and he's not what he was. But I see people, oh, he never fought anybody anyway. I'm like, wouldn't go that far. But nobody came and fought the guys he fought after they fought them, or after he fought them, or before. So for long stretches in this bout, Derevyanchenko was able to beat Golovkin to the punch. He just was quicker. And he combination punching. I mean, it's Golovkin on this back foot, man, doing this amateur stuff, man. And I didn't do what I thought. I thought he would start with the Banks' style and then say, all right, let me go handle this guy. He kind of started out trying to handle him and knocked him down. But I noticed in some of the early rounds when Golovkin wanted to fire that right hand or something, it looks as like people were in the stand saying, why'd you let him off the hook? They don't understand. He didn't let, like, come on, this is Golovkin, man. Guy got, what, 40 fights and, like, what, 30-something, 37 knockouts, 36, whatever it is. I don't have his record in front of me, but he didn't let Derevyanchenko off the hook. He couldn't pull the trigger. That's what it was. He couldn't pull the trigger. And that's what happens with age. It happened to Roy Jones Jr., who never, Roy Jones Jr. was like Muhammad Ali. They did everything wrong, but their reflexes were just so, like, out of this world, they could get away with it. But then when they got older, that stuff caught up to you. So they just backed Golovkin up, man, especially like in the middle. Look. And listen, this is almost like, when Anthony Joshua had two things. He came to America and he was going to fight Jarrell Miller, who had a lot to say last night. He was going to fight Jarrell Miller. That didn't happen. And then you bring this late replacement in who's better than Jarrell Miller. All the while, you got Wilder and Fury and whoever else on your mind. And it's like, nah. All you hear about Golovkin, Saul Alvarez this, Alvarez that. And I said it in the prior video. This guy's crafty, man. You got to be careful. And then maybe I should have paid more attention to 37 years old and new trainer and just a style that I said in the beginning wouldn't work against Derevyanchenko. It would probably work against Saul Alvarez. I love that style, but not for Derevyanchenko. And Derevyanchenko, he went to work, man. If there is every time, now I will give Golovkin this. Every time Derevyanchenko seemed to want to take control of the fight, Golovkin would come back and do something of his own. I'll give him that. And if there's a third fight between Golovkin and Alvarez, you might have two guys trying to torture themselves to make 160 pounds. Because Saul Alvarez moving up and down in weight, that's his prerogative. But when you get older and you start doing that stuff, your body betrays you. So maybe they can fight at something over 160 like he did for Steve Rolls. Because obviously making 160 is an effort at this point. I mean, if he fought over the weight against Rolls, then maybe 164 or something like that is where he belongs, or which is a catch weight. I understand it's not a weight class, but we'll see. Now, if he does that, that'll cost him the IBF and IBO titles, most likely. But at this point in life, it's about the best fights. Antonio Tarver and Glenn Johnson did that. They said, forget the belts. Let's fight. And they fought twice. Two good fights. and each guy won. Each guy won. Wait a minute. I think Johnson beat Tarver the first time. Yeah, and then Tarver fought the fight of his life the second time. He might have been in the best shape he's ever been. So it's just about fighting the best fights now. And Saturday was certainly a good fight. Once again, for the second week, I say, hey, maybe we need to see a rematch. I thought this was a fantastic fight. I thought it was better than last week's fight, in my opinion. Two older guys laid it on the line. So, well, one older guy and one old man. So, the problem with it is Golovkin was on a pace where he wanted to fight 4 or 5 times a year, and then they slowed him down with Jacobs, and then, well, Alvarez ducked him first, and then Jacobs waited him out, and then he finally fought. Jacobs was like a giant, and then Cotto just straight up ducked him. So let's not forget his years, early years. Nobody was trying to see this guy. Martinez didn't want it, so that's just what it was. So just watching the fight live, I mean, I thought it could go either way. But Golovkin winning or losing on my card is immaterial. Nobody gives a heck about my card. The real story is how much is left. How much does he have left, Golovkin? He's going to have to find a guy to fight next who can't hit and who isn't too fast. I wouldn't wait. I would say, all right, CHENKO, we can have a rematch if other stuff doesn't fall through. But while that cut heals, let me take something else. So maybe a guy who can't hit and who isn't too fast. Problem is that 6-fight deal he signed means he has to fight some real guys. Speaking of that, Golovkin was paid $15 million for this fight. $15 million. Earn with Hearn, baby. Thank you, Uncle Eddie. Shout out to Duke Oden. Earn with Hearn. Shout out to MREC TV. We chatted it up for a minute. I will say this, DAZN may have saved a little bit of money, as Golovkin has one foot halfway out the door, so he wants to build his Triple G promotions. So he made a business decision. He elected to take $7.5 million in cash, and then another $7.5 million in real estate or equity, DAZN equity, to be precise. Question is, will DAZN be around in 5 years? Anyway, CHENKO got $300,000 for his fight, his title shot with Daniel Jacobs. But on Saturday night, he got $5.2 million. So, if anybody feels he got ripped off, guess what? He got paid for it and joined the club, because Golovkin thought he got ripped off twice. And I agree with him in those Alvarez fights. I will say this, Golovkin's consistent. When he fought on HBO, he would say, Max Kellerman would ask him a question, try to ask him a loaded question, and Golovkin would look at him and say, it's boxing, Max. This is boxing. And sure enough, they said, well, you know, I mean, did you underestimate this guy? Were you sick or whatever? He was like, it's boxing. This is boxing. And he's right. I mean, it happens. I thought Porter won last week. 3/4 of the world thought Spence Jr. won. But there were some who thought Porter won, and a lot who thought it was a draw. Looking at this fight, you can go either way. If you say the CHENKO won, I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, he worked hard for his. If you say Golovkin won, I'm not going to argue with you either. I didn't score it, but just looking at it, it could have went either way. You could have given it to Derevyanchenko. This guy keeps texting me. Both Brandon Cooks and Watkins are hurt. Need Watkins to take the needle and get back on the field. Yo, so I did a check on Twitter. Sammy Watkins is killing fantasy dudes tonight by leaving the game. I don't play. I played years ago and I couldn't draft, so the computer was drafting for me, and I'm like complaining. Nobody's listening to me, and I had like the worst team. But I followed it up the next year, and I made the playoffs. Didn't win it all, but I did win it all when Kansas. This is basketball. When Kansas beat, was it Memphis? Well, when Mario Chalmers hit that 3-pointer, I think, and they played. I think they played Derrick Rose and Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. But I won it all because the person that was ahead of me picked Memphis, and then they picked whatever score they thought, and I was like, well, I'm probably gonna lose on the score thing. So the only thing I did, the only thing I could do, which was pick the opposite team and hope that his team lost, and he did. But anyway, hats off to both these guys. Like I said, they're older. Well, one guy's old, and I don't know if Derevyanchenko is going to be one of those uncrowned guys who just fought so well. You could argue he beat Jacobs. You could argue he fought Jacobs outside of the knockdown late better than Golovkin fought Jacobs. So it was a fantastic fight. Maybe I'll watch it again and score it. I don't know. But we'll see. Outside of that, we'll see where those guys go. Of course, there's pressure to fight Andre. None of that same pressure for Alvarez or Charlo, but y'all want G to fight him. Okay. Where's the Charlo pressure? He ain't fighting nobody. Just was gifted an interim belt, and now he's the champion at middleweight for what is that? WBA, WBC. It's like, come on, man. Anyway, all right. I'll catch you guys on the next one.